I can't sleep by myself in that house. Can I spend tonight here? That was her statement. No hello. No idle chatter. That's all. At 1:13 a.m., I opened the door to my apartment to find my neighbor, Grace Miller, standing barefoot, wearing pajama pants and an oversized gray hoodie, with swollen and red eyes. She had given up trying to tie her hair in a neat knot 10 hours prior. Yesterday, her husband passed away. I recall looking at her hand initially. No wedding band. Only the faint trace of tan where it had been on her finger. She must have removed it. That particular detail hurt more than the black outfit she wore to the burial, for some reason. Grace? I asked, as if it were a different Grace. A Grace who hadn't just laid her husband to rest in a Nashville suburbia cemetery. Are you all right? What a dumb question. Naturally, she wasn't. She struggled to swallow the slight trembling that rocked her shoulders once. She remarked, I had no idea where else to go. She sounded hoarse, as if she had used all of her words offering condolences and thank yous. Everyone went out. My mother returned to the lodging. The neighbors left for their homes. On the counter are the casseroles. I feel like I'm about to scream because the house is simultaneously so loud and so silent. Before she could apologize, I moved aside to allow her entry. Indeed. Naturally. Enter. My apartment mirrored hers in every way, including the layout, beige walls, and small balcony that looked out over the parking lot. Just outside of Nashville, we lived in a modest apartment complex with 2-story buildings, peeling numbers on the doors, and a shabby maple tree in the middle courtyard that turned a fiery red in the fall. 2 years prior, I had relocated here. She had been here longer than her husband, Tyler. She entered as if she were treading on thin ice. She encircled herself with her arms and surveyed my living room as if she had never seen it before. A TV on a cheap stand, an old coffee table, a couch, and a stack of mail on the kitchen counter. Ordinary. Dull. Mine. I apologize, she replied, giving herself a closer hug. Isn't this strange? I am aware that we are only pals in the hallway. Friends in the hallway. What we were was that. The folks who smiled at the mailboxes, held the door when the other person's hands were full, and occasionally carried on a conversation about the Titans game, the parking issue, or the weather. However, something had always been beneath it. A little, silent consciousness. I couldn't stop thinking about the way she laughed. When our doors were open on a Sunday morning, she used to say, "You make good coffee. It smells better than mine." Every time I saw the ring on her finger, I suppressed that awareness. Each time I noticed Tyler's pickup in its typical location. Despite the fact that my heart was racing, I said, "It's not weird. Don't worry, you're not alone tonight." Her mouth tightened as if she didn't trust herself enough to cry again, even though she nodded. Want some water? Tea? Something more potent? I walked over to the kitchen and inquired. She sat up straight as if she were in someone else's office and slipped onto the edge of the couch. She stated, "Just water. I might say inappropriate things if I drink anything else." That stayed with me. I brought over a glass of water that I had poured for her. When she took it, her fingers touched mine. Chilly. I halted. How did the funeral go? What sort of inquiry was that? How are things going for you? It wasn't any better, but I finished. She released an exhale that sounded like a sob and a chuckle colliding. People ask that a lot when you lose your husband, she added. They're not really looking for a response. To feel comfortable leaving, people want to say, "I'm fine." I took a seat in the armchair across from her, far enough away to avoid crowding her, but close enough to listen. I declared, "I'm not going anywhere. So, if you want, you can say the truth." Then her eyes locked with me. Red-rimmed hazel. I briefly had a glimpse of the Grace I knew 3 months prior, giggling in the parking lot as she dropped off her groceries and I assisted her in retrieving them, making a joke about her being a walking disaster. After then, it vanished, to be replaced by this version, which was hollowed out, yet managed to keep herself together somehow. The actual thing is, she gazed at the water she was holding. "I despise everyone." I blinked. Everyone, she said again. Those who gave me an extended hug. Those who gave me no hugs at all. Those who stated, "He's in a better place," as if they had visited and verified it. The people who delivered casseroles and then simultaneously discussed their vacation plans. They mean good, I know that. They're trying, I know that. I still despise them, though. I then despise myself for harboring hatred toward them. She sipped her water shakily. She went on, I detest the doctor who said, we did everything we could, as if it were a magic spell. The truck that ran the red light is something I detest. I regret not knowing he had passed away on the side of the road when I was at home checking my email. She squeezed her lips together firmly, as if she could tape the pain inside, and her voice broke at that. She said, and I hate that I couldn't remember how to sit on my own couch without him when everyone finally left tonight. His shadow is on every blanket, cushion, and dumb mug in the sink. The walls seem to be closing in on me. I got here after putting on the first pair of shoes I saw, which turned out to be nothing at all. I had remained stationary. I was unsure if I was expected to. In the room, grief was like a savage animal. Unless it reached for you first, you didn't reach for it. I'm happy you did, I muttered. You don't need to be all right tonight. She gave me a lengthy look as if she was unsure whether or not to believe that. After letting her shoulders contact something, she sagged back against the couch and exhaled slowly. She remarked, it's too quiet in there. Have you ever heard how loud a house is when you're waiting for someone who isn't returning? I considered my own home. The heavy footfall of the upstairs neighbor, the traffic outside, and the way the refrigerator hummed. My quiet was not new. Her voice sounded accusatory. I said, want to put something on? Music, TV, whatever. Merely to shatter it. She paused. She said, can we just talk? What about things other than death? How are you? Auto insurance or funeral homes? Yes, I said. We can discuss absolutely anything else. She lowered her head and closed her eyes. Tell me something about yourself that is true, she said. Something I couldn't infer from watching you take out your trash and carry grocery bags. I was taken aback and paused to think. All right, I replied. I thought Nashville sounded cooler than Columbus, so I moved here from Ohio. In reality, I didn't want to be the guy who never left his hometown, but I told my parents it was for work. She twitched her mouth. You were successful, she remarked. That guy is officially not you. Now it's your turn, I said. Something that isn't, I lost my marriage, or I have too many black clothes now, but is true about you. She glanced at me after opening her eyes. It had a subtle but present obstacle. She stated, at one point, I wanted to be a singer. Prior to my marriage to Tyler, I sang anywhere they would let me, including churches, open mics, and clubs in the downtown area. Maybe I would make it, I thought. After falling in love, I gave up noisy crowds and late nights for PDA meetings and early mornings. I have no regrets. However, occasionally, staring at a place on the carpet, she drifted off. What happens sometimes? Gently, I inquired. She remarked, I sometimes wonder who I would have been if I had kept singing. If I had been a little more self-centered. As she stated it, I observed her expression. There were just incomplete versions of herself there, not resentment toward Tyler. I remarked, I've never heard you sing. You never really do. But you're always humming in the hallway. That night, she smiled for the first time. It was little, brittle, but genuine. You see that? Yes, I said. Your hum is pleasant. Then she laughed. A little gasp followed by a brief, startled sound, as if guilt and delight had collided. Is it acceptable to chuckle? She muttered. Because something feels off. As if I'm using air to cheat on him. My chest hurt. I remarked, I don't think he would want you to never laugh again. That sounds like a really bad legacy. She gave me a look as though I had said something significant, even though it was clear what I had said. I'm exhausted, she said. But without him, I don't want to go to sleep in that bed. I said, you may have the couch. I'll get some blankets for you. Or I'll take the couch, and you can have my bed. Anything that helps you feel less haunted. Your sofa is all right, she added hastily. I already feel like I'm taking up too much of your space. You're not, I responded as I got to my feet. I'll get some pillows for you. I became aware that my hands were shaking as I made my way to my bedroom down the hall. It was the weight of entering someone's life at their most vulnerable time, not a fear of her. Letting her sleep on my couch that night would change everything, even if I didn't realize it at the time. Not that I made her grief go away. However, something between us subtly changed in that area that neither of us had anticipated since I allowed it to remain in the same room as my loneliness. That night, I also didn't get much sleep. I got my extra blanket, laid up the couch for her, and tried not to think too much about my neighbor, my recently widowed neighbor, going to sleep 10 feet from my bedroom door. I handed her a folded t-shirt and said, here, funeral day if you want something less. She picked it up and rubbed the soiled cotton between her fingers. She inquired, "Is this your favorite one?" I gave a shrug. Was wearing a college shirt. Retired to the rank of sleepwear. She whispered, "I'll try not to ruin its legacy." She vanished into the restroom. I heard the faint noises of someone attempting to wash away a day they will never forget, the soft click of the lock, and the running water. I sat on the side of my bed in my room and gazed at the floor. There was another person in the flat, and it seemed different. Not just anybody. She was wearing her own PJ pants and my t-shirt when she came out. It reached her mid-thigh and hung long. Somehow, she appeared smaller, simultaneously younger and older. She held out her arms and asked, "How do I look?" If you had to rate high fashion on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say college laundry day. "Really?" I asked. "You appear to be someone who has endured a lot, while yet remembering to wear clean clothes. That is quite remarkable." She gave a shaky smile. She remarked, "I keep waiting to wake up. It's been a crazy dream all week, and I'm going to hear him yelling and snoring at SportsCenter." I simply gestured toward the couch because I was at a loss for words. "Remain motionless. It won't be completely dark since I'll keep the hallway light on." She paused. "Will you not completely shut your door?" she inquired. "Only for tonight." "That's strange, I know. I must have the impression that there is another person breathing in this room." "Yeah," I said right away. "No issue." Pulling the cover up to her chin, she lay down and gazed at the ceiling. The warm glow of the hallway remained after I switched off the main light. She said that while I was walking to my room. "I'm grateful, Ethan," she muttered. I didn't know how much I'd longed to hear my name in her voice until it hit me in the chest. I said, "Anytime, Grace." I left the door to my bedroom ajar. I listened while lying on my bed and gazing at the strip of light on the floor. For a time, the only sounds coming from the apartment were the typical ones, the slight hum of the refrigerator, a car outside, and the above neighbor moving about as if his feet were made of concrete blocks. Then I heard it. First, quiet. Breaths, soft and raspy. A little, fragmented sound. She was in tears. Not the boisterous, theatrical type. When someone has run out of tears but their body hasn't received the message, they make the silent, worn-out sort. I wanted to get up, go over, and let her know she wasn't alone. However, there's a boundary you don't cross without permission, particularly when it comes to someone whose heart has been ripped apart in front of you. I allowed her sorrow to permeate the flat as I lay there, gazing at the ceiling. Mine was smaller but still there, sitting next to it. The revelation that I had been sleepwalking through my own life until a knock on my door at 1:13 a.m., loneliness, and past breakups. The silence changed at one point. She evened out her breathing. At last, I closed my eyes. Sunlight was peeking through the blinds when I woke up. For a little while, I was unaware of her presence. Then I detected a coffee scent. Grace was in my kitchen, barefoot on the chilly tile, hair pulled back, and my t-shirt dangling off one shoulder when I stepped out into the living room. She was reading the label on my coffee bag as if it were a sacred scripture while holding my coffee mug with the chipped rim. "Good morning," she greeted him. Although scratchy, her voice was not as torn as it had been the night before. "Do you get any sleep?" I inquired. "A bit," she murmured. "I'm now seriously involved with your couch. Should I feel envious?" I inquired. She looked at me as though she understood the joke, but wasn't quite ready to play. Instead, she answered, "I made coffee. I omitted the sugar and cream because I wasn't sure how you would react to it." I remarked, "I take it like my personality. Reliable and boring." She gave a soft snort. "You say that as if it were a negative thing." We sat with our cups between us at the tiny kitchen table. As if she needed the warmth more than the caffeine, she wrapped her hands around her own. She looked at the table and remarked, "I have to go back there today. To the residence. To everything." "Yes," I answered quietly. She went on, "The bed is made. As is customary on Sundays. Before we left for church, I made it." He never pulled the blanket all the way up, so I recall pulling his side harder. My hand keeps smoothing it, as if I knew something but chose not to express it. She gave a headshake. "Impetuous." "It's not dumb," I remarked. After taking a sip of her coffee, she glanced over the edge at me. She said, "May I ask you a strange question? I feel like we've already surpassed normal after the night we just had." I remarked. "All right," she questioned. "Is there someone who will be upset that you allowed a widow to sleep on your couch?" A girlfriend? Does an ex still possess a key? A mother who makes excessive calls? I said, no girlfriend. No ex with a key. Even though my mom calls too loud, she's just glad I'm conversing with someone other than my Xbox. That's a little depressing, she replied softly. I like mysterious loner, I answered. After smiling, she returned to her somber demeanor. She questioned, do you ever feel like your life is half finished? As if you're just the draft that got stuck, and there's a real version of you out there who accomplished everything you believed you would. Always, I said. Why do you think I started over after moving states? She questioned, what did you leave behind? I uttered the words, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. After a long-term relationship, and a position that elevated me to the status of a glorified printer technician. She grimaced. Awful. On both. I remarked, it was pretty textbook as far as heartbreaks go. No auto accidents. No funerals. Just two individuals who couldn't figure out how to stay together after outgrowing one another. She lowered her gaze to her mug. I would have accepted that, she said. Above this. I felt guilty for even drawing the analogy. Her tragedy made my own seem like a fractured bone next to a skinned knee. I said, hey, I apologize. I didn't intend to. It's all right, she interrupted. Competition is unnecessary for pain. She let out a breath. You receive your own interpretation of what now. My is my. It didn't feel as awkward as it should have when we slipped into silence. Two folks are attempting to find out how to live after things didn't go as planned while seated at a cheap kitchen table and sipping mediocre coffee. She pushed her chair back at last. She said, I ought to leave. Before my mother dispatches a SWAT squad. I escorted her to the exit. Her hand was on the knob when she paused. Thank you, she repeated, for allowing me to be, not all right. Anytime, I replied. I mean it. After giving a nod, she bit her lip. She answered, I might take you up on that. The thing that's not okay. That seems to be my new default configuration. The door shut behind her. Immediately, the flat felt larger and more empty. I spent more time with her over the course of the following week than I had in the year before. At times, it was minor, passing each other at the mailboxes, her wearing an old sweatshirt and leggings, her hair pulled back, her eyes weary. Later in the day, I began timing my own mail run in the hopes of accidentally catching her. It quickly ceased feeling unintentional. How is your mother doing? I asked once. Grace remarked, she's nesting in my kitchen. Never in my life have I seen so many containers with labels. She would have it covered if Tupperware could organize grief. I once witnessed her carrying a box to her car, her arms trembling under its weight. Before I could talk myself out of it, I left my flat. Need help? I inquired. She nodded at the box and remarked, it's just clothes. Tyler's. Before I decide to put them all back in the closet, I'm taking them to a charity center. Without mentioning how light the package was, I grabbed it from her. The weight wasn't the issue. There were other boxes in her trunk when I placed it there. A few shut down. Old baseball caps, ties, and shirts are tumbling out of some that are still open. Are you alone in this? I inquired. She stated, I don't think anyone can really help with the part that hurts. But it would be nice to have another human in the room so I don't start talking to his shoelaces. Before she said the inquiry, she gazed at me through the trunk lid. Would you? She took a swallow. Maybe you could sit with me for a little while as I finish the remaining ones. To take no action. Simply be present. I swear not to sulk all over your t-shirt ever again. I felt a tightness in my chest. This was no longer merely neighborly. This was entering the area he used to occupy, the interior of her life. Yes, I said. I am capable of doing that. For the first time, we entered her apartment jointly. I had caught glimpses of the interior via the entryway, including photos on the wall, a different couch, and plants on the ledge, but entering seemed personal. Grief held on to everything like dust, not because it was romantic. The shelves were adorned with framed pictures. Tyler and Grace near a lake. At a Predators game, Grace and Tyler. Younger Grace and Tyler holding plastic drinks and beaming with hope at what appeared to be a college celebration. She saw me glancing. We met at a coffee shop on campus, she muttered. He covered my notebook with his drink. He promised to compensate me. I suppose he did. In numerous ways. I followed her down the hall to their bedroom since I was at a loss for words. As far as people who shared space for a long period are concerned, it was neat. Under the glass, his boots were lined up. A stack of her shoes by the closet. The bed has 2 pillows. Just one was dented. She took out a flannel shirt and sat on the floor near the open closet. After holding it briefly to her face, she carefully folded it and placed it in the box between us. She questioned, "Have you ever felt like you're erasing someone by putting their belongings in a box?" As if I were packing away evidence of his existence. "I don't think someone who lived in your bones for this long can be erased by a donation bin," I remarked. "This is only a matter of logistics. No matter what you do with his socks, your heart will remain a mess for some time." Through her nose, she laughed. She remarked, "That may be the least poetic thing anyone has ever said about grief. But in an odd way, it helps." For a while, we worked in silence. She gave me some items. I tried not to dwell on the life that was visible between the threads as I folded and piled. She stopped abruptly when she took out a faded denim jacket. She remarked, "He wore this the night he proposed." The fair was where we were. He nearly let the ring fall off the Ferris wheel. Her lips were squeezed firmly together. Her eyes grew wide. "Want to hold on to that one?" I asked quietly. She gave a nod and carefully placed it on the bed, away from the box. "Not just yet," she muttered. "I can't wait to find out where that is." Until the box was filled, we continued. Even though my back hurt and my legs were numb, I dared not complain. She gave me a look that was impossible to read as we finally stood up. "This isn't your typical neighbor stuff, are you?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I assumed that when you slept on my couch, the idea of a regular neighbor was out the window." She questioned, "And you're okay with that? With being drawn into my life's least desirable season?" I probably gave the answer more thought than was necessary, because I could either step in or step back at this line. I didn't mean to offend, but prior to this, my life wasn't exactly a highlight reel. I shrugged when you asked if I was comfortable being your buddy when you were in the middle of a breakdown. "Indeed. Yes, I am." She examined me as if she were weighing the truth against my will. At last, she said, "All right. Then, remain. For a short time. I do not wish to be in this room by myself with these boxes." I took a seat next to her again on the floor, our shoulders nearly touching. I had no idea at the time that the slow change would begin with 2 individuals sitting on a bedroom floor, packing up a dead man's things as a quiet and complex relationship developed between them, rather than with a dramatic kiss or some big disclosure. Long before either of us stated it aloud, people began to assume we were dating. The mailbox was where it started. As I was going through my junk mail, Mrs. Hargrove from 1B noticed us. Grace stood by my side, wearing leggings and a faded Nashville strong hoodie. She had no makeup on, and her hair was tied back in an untidy ponytail. I was wearing my go-to t-shirt and jeans. We had just gone back from the donation center after dropping off another box of Tyler's clothing. "You two look adorable," Mrs. Hargrove remarked, grinning as if she were privy to a secret. "Young love. It's good to see." Beside me, Grace's body grew rigid. I felt sick to my stomach. She began to say, "It's not," but stopped when her voice caught. She tried to grin. "Mrs. Hargrove, have a wonderful day." Silently, we made our way upstairs. The words felt like a veil hanging between us. She leaned her forehead against the door of her flat and shut it a bit more forcefully than needed. "Young love," she whispered to him. "People already have substitute narratives for me before Tyler has even been in the ground for 3 months. "Hey," I murmured. She has no idea what she's discussing. She turned, arms folded, back against the door. "Does she not?" she inquired. "I'm always here with you. You assisted me in going over his entire life, even his shoes and clothing. I was allowed to cry on your couch. This eventually ceases to appear as kindness and begins to appear as something else." I stared at her. "How does it appear to you?" I inquired. Startled by the inquiry, she blinked. "I'm not sure," she said. "That is the issue. My heart and intellect are always alerting me that it's too soon." Frustrated, she shook her head. "When someone shows up and doesn't run, my heart is at a loss for what to do." I took a swallow. I said, "Grace, you're free to have people who stay. It's not illegal." Silently, she remarked, "It feels like one. As if I were unfaithful to a ghost." After that, we didn't speak for a few days. Not because we were angry. Simply put, I'm overwhelmed. Once, she texted me to let me know her mom had left for home. A stupid meme about coffee and survival was texted back by me. We had the impression that we were on different sides of the same thin ice. Then Friday arrived. A knock on my door interrupted me as I was using my laptop to resolve a glitch for a client. Not the crazy, in the middle of the night sort. A typical 3-tap kind. When I opened it, I saw Grace standing there with her hair genuinely brushed and mascara applied, wearing jeans and a lovely green sweater. I was more shocked by it than by the weeping. She said, "Hey, what are your plans for tonight?" I blinked. "Weird ones," I remarked. "This laptop, a frozen pizza, and me." She gave a small smile. "Is it possible for you to exchange that for a school gym and me?" "What?" She displayed a piece of folded paper. "Tyler's former high school is hosting a memorial fundraiser," she stated. "In his honor, they established a scholarship. Football boosting device. His father, mother, and some of his former school pals are leaving. Without him, everyone will have different ideas about how I look." She inhaled. "I don't want to enter that room by myself." Her hesitant but determined eyes met mine. "Will you accompany me?" she inquired. It wasn't a date. Not at all. It was walking into the past, emotional bodyguard duty and escort duty. My heart, however, continued to pound as if she had asked me to prom. "Yes," I said. Obviously. Her expression of relief made my chest hurt. "All right," she said. "It is 7 o'clock. I'll be the driver. If you don't mind being spotted with me in a dealership loaner minivan." I said, "Do I get to watch cartoons while sitting in the back?" She grinned. "If you're good." The fragrance of popcorn, floor polish, and nostalgia filled the Franklin High gym. Gold and blue banners dangled from the rafters. Tyler was seen smiling in his football jersey with his helmet tucked under his arm on a large sign beside the entrance. Above it was printed, "Tyler Miller Memorial Scholarship Fund." Grace's hand gripped the program tightly. She whispered, "God, he'd hate that picture. He always claimed that he looked like a mushroom because of his helmet hair." "He appears content," I remarked. "He was," she murmured quietly. While juggling plastic cups and little plates of food, parents, educators, and former classmates wandered about. In one area was a raffle table. A projector screen displayed a slideshow of Tyler's life, including pictures from his wedding, football games, and babies. When Grace was 21, she was wearing a white dress, her arm linked through his, and she laughed. Halfway through, I had the impression that I had wandered into someone else's film. We were contacted by a woman who shared Grace's hazel eyes. The likeness was obvious, even if her hair was shorter and more gray. She embraced Grace and said, "Sweetheart, you look stunning." Grace said, "Hello, Mrs. Miller," into her shoulder. Then taking a step back, "Mom." With a hint of habit in her voice, she continued for my benefit. "You can call her Mom now, remember? Was she her former mother-in-law?" She turned to face me. "Still mother-in-law?" She remarked, "And you must be Ethan. We've been informed about you." I tensed up. "I hope everything goes well." Her smile was tinged with fatigue. She said, "She says you've been a good neighbor." Good neighbors are hard to come by. These days, no one knows how to look someone in the eye. I replied, "I usually just carry boxes and bring coffee." Then Grace put her hand through my arm. Even though it was sufficiently informal for the public, my heart nevertheless skipped a beat. She remarked, "He does more than that. He appears." There was a glimmer of appreciation in her mother's eyes that I didn't think I deserved. Later, someone leaned forward from behind us as we sat at one of the circular tables and listened to the principal discuss Tyler's legacy. "Grace," said a female voice. "Oh my God. Hello." When we turned around, we saw a woman our age with blonde hair, a lot of makeup, and a dress that was a bit too tight. Her gaze shifted from one of us to our clasped arms. "I'm so sorry," she blurted out. "Concerning Tyler. We were out of town, but I still wanted to attend the funeral." "Is this your new man?" Grace's shoulders tensed up once more. "This is Ethan, my neighbor," she added. "He's only here to make sure I don't stab someone who says something inappropriate." As if it were a joke, the woman laughed. She remarked, "Girl, I have no idea how you're even standing. I would be in a padded room if I lost Derek." Grace smiled slightly, but not enough to show her eyes. "On certain days, that sounds pleasant," she remarked. As if we were accomplices, the woman lowered her voice and leaned closer. "Tyler would want you to be content," she said. "Don't let anyone criticize you if you move on quickly. Life is brief." Grace flinched next to me. "Pardon me," she responded firmly. "I need to breathe." Her chair scraped the floor as she stood up so quickly. I trailed after her as we went past the trophy cases and faded class pictures into the corridor. Bracing her palms against the cool brick wall, she paused close to a water fountain. She shook her voice and added, "Everyone thinks this is a movie." As if there were a perfect timetable for grieving. Month 3, beginning to grin, but still depressed. Maybe a flirtatious joke in month 6. A montage of failed dates awaits you in year 1. In the 3.5 months, when I can't tell if I'm acting or breathing, no one knows what to do. I took a step toward him, but not too close. I said, "You owe no one a schedule. Not the woman with too much highlighter, not your old friends, not your in-laws." A strangled laugh came out of her throat. "You also noticed that?" I remarked. It was blinding. Then she gave me a glance. Glance closely. Her eyes were steady, but wet. She said, "Can I ask you a question and get a genuine response?" "Always," I said. She questioned, "What are we?" "Me and you." "Since you've witnessed more of my broken parts than anyone else in my life, I can't keep telling people that he's just my neighbor." I was certain she could see my heart thumping so loudly through my shirt. I said, "I'm not sure how to categorize it yet. However, I am aware of my concern for you. A great deal. And I don't want you to suffer in silence because I know how you feel." She weighed that as she observed me. She said, "And if caring turns into more? What if I begin to look at you in a way that simultaneously makes me feel hopeful, guilty, and nauseous?" I said, "I think that's already happening." Before I could stop myself, her eyes grew a little wider. The air between us changed. It became thicker and more agitated. "That's the issue," she said. As we stood there, the hum of fluorescent lights, the sound of muffled speeches reverberating down the hallway, and the ancient linoleum beneath our feet, something between us shifted from darkness to light. She said, "Ethan, I'm afraid. I'm afraid I'm betraying him if I allow myself to feel something genuine for you. And I'm afraid that if I don't, I'll be trapped in that ghostly mansion indefinitely." With 100 answers vying for my attention, I opened my mouth. Her father-in-law yelled her name and asked her to come up for a group photo by the banner before I could say anything further. She smoothed her sweater, wiped under her eyes, and took a nervous breath. She said, "This conversation isn't over." "No," I replied. "It isn't." As we made our way back into the gym, both of us acting like we were just neighbors, she put her arm through mine once more. However, we were both aware that the truth had entered the room with us and would not be leaving gently. That night, we didn't discuss what we were. Following the speeches, the slideshow, and the group pictures taken under Tyler's flag, we eventually fled to the parking lot when too many people gave her arm squeezes and complimented her on her strength. Outside the gym, the air was calm and cool. In the distance, the lights from the football field were glowing. Crickets gave their flimsy appearance of tranquility. Grace closed her eyes and rested against the side of the minivan she had borrowed. She remarked, "I feel like my skin was peeled off. Everyone is watching me, waiting to see if I cry, smile, or burst into flames." I said, "You handled it." "I made it through it," she clarified. "There is a distinction." We were largely silent as we drove home. A country song about loss and second chances was playing on the radio. On the nose, too. In any case, we let it play. She parked the van in the apartment lot and sat with her hands on the steering wheel. "Want to enter?" she inquired. "Not for anything at all. I simply don't want to remove these shoes by myself." It was such a tiny, particular thing. I was more affected by it than by any speaker in that gym. "Yes," I said. "I'll enter." She kicked off her shoes and threw her keys in the basin near the door of her apartment. There was a gentle thump when they hit the mat. She flexed her toes and said, "God, that's better." She poured water for us both in the kitchen before settling down on the couch. I sat in the same chair that I had on that first night, across from her. I stated, "Just to be clear, you didn't stab anyone." "Drew near," she remarked. Highlighter Girl was a formidable opponent. After taking a sip of her water, she put down the glass and gazed at her hands. She said, "You meant what you said in the hallway? About caring about me?" "Yes," I said. "Yes, I did." When she asked, "And you meant it when you said you don't know how to label this yet?" "Yeah," I replied. "I can't think of a catchy name for it. I simply know that compared to the 2 years prior, my life made more sense during the last few months with you in it." She took a moment to consider that. She remarked, I feel both pulled in different directions. A part of me wishes to burrow into a hole and keep my memories safe from harm. The other part, the part that knocks on your door at 1:13 in the morning, wants to come back to life. Without recoiling, it wants to laugh. It desires to. She walked away. Wants to what? I inquired. Her eyes gleamed as she gazed up at me. She said, "It wants to see what happens if I don't push you away." My heart pounded. "All right," I answered quietly. "Then don't." "It's not that easy," she remarked. I hear his voice whenever I feel anything for you. Not upset. They are just there. Over my shoulder, like a shadow. As if he were observing me as I messed up the widow script. I put my elbows on my knees and leaned forward. "Is there anything I can say that might come across as harsh?" I inquired. She paused. "Yes." As softly as possible, I said, "He's not here. You are. You are the one who must continuously wake up, make coffee, pay your bills, and breathe. Your love for someone else, whether it be me or someone else, does not negate your relationship with him. He is not erased by it." Her chin shook. She remarked, "It feels like it might." I responded, "It can't. Before I even moved here, you knew him. Before I even carried your groceries, you were in love with him. You have entire pages that I will never touch. And that's all right." I inhaled. I'm not attempting to take his place. His place is not mine. I want mine. Whatever it is. Whatever it turns out to be. This time, she didn't conceal the tears streaming down her cheeks as her eyes filled and spilled. "I wish I could ask him sometimes," she remarked. "Just once. Is it all right? If I'm not miserable forever, are you comfortable with that?" I answered, "I don't think he wanted you condemned to a life of casseroles and pitying looks if he loved you the way you claim he did." Through her tears, she chuckled. "You have a blunt way of saying things that keeps coming back to comforting." "I'm proficient with computers," I declared. Emotions are still in beta testing. Using the heel of her hand to wipe her cheeks, she sniffed. "Ethan, what do you want from me?" she said. "Now, what would you ask if I told you to be wholly self-centered?" For a moment, the question made me gasp for breath. It had been a while since someone had asked me that. "I desire." I began, then paused, trying to find the appropriate words. "I want to feel cared for without you hating yourself for allowing me to do so. When the stillness becomes too loud, I want to be the one you text. When your car won't start, I want to be the one to arrive with coffee, crude jokes, and a car." Her gaze remained fixed on mine. I pushed myself to continue. "I'd like to hold your hand in the hallway one day and not have to act like we're just neighbors," I murmured softly. I gulped. "I want to kiss you without feeling like I took something that wasn't mine. But only when you're ready do I desire those things. Completely prepared. Not due of your loneliness. Not because they anticipate a moving on narrative of some sort. Since you desire me. With all my dull, trustworthy, Xbox-playing self." Suddenly, the room felt incredibly small. The weight of that moment overshadowed the ticking clock, the humming refrigerator, and the faint sounds coming from another apartment. Slowly, she got up and moved to sit with me on the chair's edge rather than the sofa. Now we were near. "This is too near to be a non-issue," she remarked. "I'm not sure if I'm prepared for all of that. But I am aware of this." Her fingers were icy yet firm when she gripped my hand. "I knocked on your door when the silence became too heavy. Not my mother's. Not my sister's. Yours. And ever since, my mind always says your name first as the walls begin to close in." My chest was very constricted. I gave her hand a light squeeze. I remarked, "That sounds like a start." She nodded while shedding more tears, but she kept her eyes fixed on him. She said, "I can't guarantee I won't freak out. I can't guarantee that there won't be days when I fade into the past and you feel alienated. There's no guarantee that I won't say something like, 'Tyler used to do it this way,' and then regret it. Ethan, I'm a wreck. A living, breathing ball of sorrow, I understand," I replied. "You and I have met." She still laughed in spite of everything. It was real, but it trembled. "What are you able to guarantee?" Gently, I inquired. She pondered for a while. At last, she added, "I can assure you that I will be truthful. I'll say if it's too much. I'll say if it's not sufficient. I'll say if I'm afraid. I won't leave you wondering what's going through my mind." I remarked, "That's more than most people give." I inhaled as my own fear attempted to clamber up my throat. "All right," I replied. "This is what I swear to you. I'll be present. I won't treat you as a story to finish or a job to fix. I will allow this to proceed at whatever pace is necessary. And I want you to be honest with me if you ever decide you can't do this with me. Don't fade off gradually. Stay away from me in the hallway. Her lips twitched, leaving notes that read, "It's not you, it's grief," on your door. "Don't, please," I said. We both grinned as the room's weight changed. It wasn't gone, but it was shared. She inhaled again before doing what I had been considering since the school hallway. Leaning forward, she gave me a kiss. It was gentle, even tentative. Her mouth tasted of coffee and salt. Her fingers cooled against my skin as she moved one hand to the side of my neck. My hand settled around her waist as if I didn't want to surprise her. My mind cried out for a moment that it was too complicated, too early, and too much. Then there was silence. She was the first to pull back, breathing a little more quickly and her eyes wide. "All right," she muttered. "That is the most perplexing thing I have ever enjoyed, officially." "Same," I said. Our noses nearly touched as she pressed her forehead against mine. She remarked, "I don't know what happens now. As a widow, I have no idea how to date. Is a guidebook available?" "So, after losing your husband, you unintentionally fell for your neighbor?" I remarked, "It sounds like a bad self-help book. On Amazon, 1 star." She chuckled once more, a bit more freely. I suggested, "Perhaps we write our own version. First rule, don't act fake. Second rule, drink a lot of coffee. Rule 3, knock on my door if the silence becomes too heavy, even at 1:13 in the morning." After closing her eyes for a while, she opened them and gave a nod. "Rule 4, she murmured. "One day, we're permitted to experience happiness once more, without feeling as though we've broken the law." "Agree," I said. For a long, we sat in that position, our hands still connected, breathing the same air. In her closet, Tyler's jacket was still hanging. The walls were still covered with his photos. The mere fact that our lips met did not make him go. However, there was a change in the room. It created room. Nothing and everything changed in the weeks that followed. Even while we still visited the mailbox occasionally, we now occasionally intentionally brushed our fingers on it. Her knee occasionally lingered against mine a bit longer, but we still drank coffee at my small kitchen table. She slept in her own bed on several evenings. She would text me on some evenings when the solitude became too much, and I would find her on my couch once again, with my hand over hers, my head on my shoulder, and my old college t-shirt wrapped over her. We took our time. On certain nights, she retreated, her eyes averted, absorbed in a recollection I was unable to share. She apologized on several mornings for tears that I couldn't stop. There were times when she felt so overcome with shame that she remained silent for hours. But we began constructing something within the gaps that grief had created, slowly and carefully. A few months later, we watched the sunset turn the parking lot gold while standing on the balcony between our apartments one evening. "Do you ever think he'd be mad?" she asked abruptly, observing us in this manner. I reflected on how everyone had spoken about him at the memorial, the scholarship flag, and the mushroom haircut he had detested. "No," I replied. "When the silence became too great, I believe he would be happy that you knocked on someone's door. And I hope he understands that I'm trying my hardest not to mess this up if something comes up after this." With her head resting comfortably on my shoulder, she put her hand in mine. She whispered, "I used to think my heart was a one-room house. When Tyler passed away, the room that he occupied burned destroyed. I had no idea that there might be another room. For everything else. For anybody else." I gave her hand a squeeze. I stated, "I don't want to replace that room. All I need is a key to the new one." Her grin was genuine and gentle. She remarked, "You already have it." And as the sky above our small Nashville complex changed from gold to pink to deep blue, with the sounds of other people's lives drifting up and traffic headlights flickering below, I came to the simple yet profound realization. The night she kissed me was not the beginning of our story. It began the night she requested, "Can I stay here tonight?" as she knocked on my door, broken and barefoot. I had only opened it. And each time the silence grew too great for her to bear alone, she continued to open it.
If you felt good in this story, like, subscribe, and join me in the next one. Thank you.